The wheelchair sat motionless in Central Park, as 8-year-old Emma Sterling gripped the armrests with white knuckles, her paralyzed legs trembling with impossible effort. Olivia Sterling watched in stunned disbelief as her daughter, who hadn't moved from the waist down in 18 months, suddenly pushed herself up, actually standing for 3 miraculous seconds before collapsing back. The stranger kneeling beside them, just an ordinary man in faded jeans, simply smiled and said, "See? The magic was always inside you." Olivia's designer heels dug into the grass. As her world tilted, this random father had just achieved what millions in medical treatments couldn't. Could an ordinary man succeed where money and medicine had failed? Watch closely, for some miracles come not from laboratories, but from the simplest acts of faith. Olivia Sterling commanded boardrooms with the same effortless authority that fashion models commanded runways. At 34, she had built an empire from ambition and intellect. Her wardrobe of designer dresses and perfectly tailored suits, merely the outer shell of a woman who had conquered every challenge life had thrown at her until 18 months ago. That was when a drunk driver had stolen her daughter's ability to walk, transforming their Manhattan penthouse from a home into a beautiful prison where hope had slowly withered away. Emma had inherited her mother's golden hair and delicate features, but where Olivia's eyes blazed with determination, Emma's had grown dim with resignation. The child who once danced through their apartment in tutus now sat silent in her custom wheelchair, watching life pass by through floor-to-ceiling windows that might as well have been prison bars. The finest doctors in New York, specialists flown in from Switzerland, experimental treatments that cost more than most people's homes. None of it had restored feeling to those small, still legs. Across the city, in a modest apartment in Brooklyn, another single parent prepared for a different kind of Saturday. Ethan Carter stood 6'2", his broad shoulders and calloused hands telling the story of honest work and harder choices. At 36, he had the weathered handsomeness of a man who had learned to find joy in simple things. His 7-year-old daughter Lily's laughter, a successful repair at the auto shop, Sunday morning pancakes, his brown hair, always slightly tousled despite his efforts, and the stubble he never quite managed to fully shave, gave him an approachable warmth that put people at ease. Lily was everything. Emma was not a whirlwind of energy with her father's brown eyes, and an infectious giggle that could light up any room. She bounded through life with the confidence of a child who knew she was loved, her scuffed sneakers and grass-stained jeans a testament to a childhood spent exploring rather than posing. Where Emma's world had shrunk to the confines of her wheelchair, Lily's seemed to expand with every breath she took. New York City served as the backdrop for these two vastly different worlds, Olivia's Manhattan of glass towers and private drivers, and Ethan's Brooklyn of subway rides and neighborhood barbecues. Yet on this particular Saturday, the invisible threads of fate were pulling these parallel lives toward an intersection that would change everything. The playground at Central Park South had become Olivia's Saturday morning ritual, though calling it torture might have been more accurate. She brought Emma here because the therapists insisted that socialization was important, that being around other children might spark something. But week after week, Olivia watched her daughter shrink deeper into herself as children ran past, their parents shooting sympathetic glances that felt like needles under her skin. This morning started no differently. Olivia had dressed Emma in a beautiful blue dress, her golden hair brushed until it shone, as if perfect presentation could somehow compensate for everything else. She had positioned the wheelchair near the sandbox where a group of children were building castles, hoping proximity might inspire engagement. Instead, Emma stared at her motionless hands folded in her lap, as distant as a star. The whispers started almost immediately. Olivia had developed a sixth sense for them. The hushed conversations between mothers who recognized her from business magazines, their voices carrying despite their attempts at discretion. "Such a shame," one murmured. "All that money, and she still can't help her own daughter." Another added, "I heard she's tried everything. Poor little thing. Poor little thing." The words burned like acid in Olivia's chest. Her daughter was not a thing to be pitied. Emma was brilliant and beautiful, and had once filled their home with songs and stories. But as Olivia watched her daughter's face remain expressionless, while other children laughed nearby, She wondered if she was the only one who still remembered that vibrant little girl. The cruelty came from a boy no older than 10, his voice cutting through the morning air with the casual brutality only children could manage. "Hey, look at the broken doll," he called to his friends, pointing at Emma. "She can't even move. Is she even real?" Emma's face crumpled, a single tear trailing down her cheek. Olivia surged forward, her maternal instincts roaring to life. But before she could reach the boy, his mother had already grabbed his arm, scolding him in embarrassed whispers while shooting apologetic glances at Olivia. But the damage was done. Emma had turned her face away, retreating even further into herself. Olivia knelt beside the wheelchair, her designer dress pressing into the dusty ground as she gently wiped her daughter's tear. "Don't listen to him, sweetheart," she whispered, though her own voice trembled with suppressed rage and grief. "You're perfect, exactly as you are." But Emma didn't respond. She rarely did anymore. The child who had once chattered nonstop about princesses and butterflies now communicated mainly through silence. The specialists called it psychological withdrawal, a defense mechanism against trauma. Olivia called it watching her daughter disappear one day at a time. She had tried everything: the best doctors at Mount Sinai, specialists from Johns Hopkins, experimental treatments in Switzerland that insurance wouldn't cover. She had read every medical journal, consulted every expert, spent fortunes on equipment and therapies that promised miracles but delivered only disappointment. The chief of neurology at Presbyterian had finally told her, with the kind of gentle finality that shattered hope, that some spinal injuries simply didn't heal, that she should focus on making Emma comfortable rather than chasing impossible dreams. Comfortable. As if Olivia could ever be comfortable watching her daughter fade away like a photograph left too long in the sun. She had built a billion-dollar company from nothing, had negotiated with titans of industry and won, had overcome every obstacle life had thrown at her. But she couldn't make her daughter's legs work. She couldn't even make her smile anymore. The pressure at work had become unbearable. The board whispered about her distraction, her lack of focus. Some even suggested she take a leave of absence, though they all knew what that really meant in their cutthroat world. Olivia Sterling, the woman who had once been called the Iron Rose of Wall Street, was showing cracks, and in their world, cracks were fatal. But none of that mattered as much as the little girl in the wheelchair, staring at nothing while the world spun on without her. Olivia would have traded every dollar, every achievement, every accolade, just to see Emma run again. She would have burned her entire empire to the ground for one genuine laugh from her daughter. As she stood to push the wheelchair away from the playground, away from the cruel boy and the pitying stares, she noticed a man and a little girl approaching. The girl was skipping, her brown ponytail bouncing with each step, and she was pulling her father toward the sandbox with determined enthusiasm. They were clearly not from Olivia's world. The man wore faded jeans and a simple cotton shirt, his work boots worn but clean. Yet there was something about the way he moved, the easy confidence in his stride, that made Olivia pause. The little girl broke free from her father's hand and ran straight toward Emma's wheelchair, skidding to a stop just inches away. Olivia tensed, ready to shield her daughter from another cruel encounter. But the girl's face was bright with genuine friendliness. "Hi, I'm Lily," she announced with the kind of fearless enthusiasm that only children possessed. "Want to see my treasure? I found it by the pond. And Daddy says it might be magic." Emma didn't respond, didn't even look up. But Lily seemed unbothered by the silence. She plopped down on the ground right in front of the wheelchair and pulled out a smooth white stone from her pocket, holding it up so it caught the light. "Daddy says that means it has wishes inside. You can make one if you want." The man approached then, and Olivia found herself momentarily struck by his presence. He was handsome in an entirely different way from the polished executive she dealt with daily. There was something genuine in his brown eyes, a warmth that seemed to radiate from within. He smiled apologetically at Olivia. "Sorry about Lily," he said, his voice deep and gentle. "She's never met a stranger. I'm Ethan, by the way." "It's fine," Olivia replied automatically, though she kept her guard up. She had learned to be wary of strangers who approached them, especially men. Some wanted photos with the famous CEO, others saw opportunity in her tragedy. But this man didn't seem to recognize her at all. His attention was entirely on the children. Lily was still chattering to Emma about her stone, creating elaborate stories about where it came from and what kind of wishes it could grant. And then, something extraordinary happened. Emma's eyes flickered toward the stone. It was the smallest movement, barely noticeable, but Olivia saw it. Her daughter was listening. Ethan must have noticed too, because he slowly moved around the wheelchair and crouched down, bringing himself to Emma's eye level. He didn't speak immediately, just stayed there in comfortable silence, while his daughter continued her monologue about magical stones and wish-granting fish. When he finally did speak, his voice was soft, meant only for Emma. "You know what I think?" he said, as if sharing a secret. "I think the magic isn't in the stone at all. I think it's in the person holding it. Some people have so much magic inside them that it just needs the tiniest reason to come out." Emma's eyes, those beautiful blue eyes that had been empty for so long, slowly turned toward him. Olivia held her breath, afraid to move, afraid to break whatever spell this stranger was weaving. "When I was young," Ethan continued, still in that gentle voice, "I couldn't speak for almost 2 years. Not a word. Everyone said I was broken, that something in my head didn't work right. But my mom, she never believed them. She said I was just saving up all my words for when I really needed them. And you know what? She was right. One day, I just started talking, and I haven't shut up since." He smiled then, a crooked, self-deprecating grin that transformed his face. "Just ask Lily, she'll tell you. I talk way too much." "It's true," Lily piped up cheerfully. "Daddy tells the longest bedtime stories ever. Sometimes I fall asleep before the dragon even shows up." Something shifted in Emma's expression. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to speak but couldn't quite remember how. Ethan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, and gently placed the white stone in her small hand. "Sometimes," he said, "our bodies just need to remember what they already know how to do, like riding a bike or swimming. The knowing is still there, just sleeping. And when it wakes up," he paused, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. "When it wakes up, it's like magic." What happened next shattered 18 months of medical certainty in the span of heartbeats. Emma's hands gripped the armrests of her wheelchair, her knuckles white with effort, her face scrunched with concentration that Olivia hadn't seen since before the accident. And then, impossibly, miraculously, Emma began to push herself up. Olivia's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a cry that was part shock, part desperate hope. She watched as her daughter's legs, those legs that doctors swore would never bear weight again, trembled and shook but held. For 1 second, 2, 3 full seconds, Emma Sterling stood on her own feet, her body swaying like a young tree in wind, but standing nonetheless. Then her strength gave out, and she collapsed back into the chair, breathing hard, eyes wide with wonder and fear and something that looked devastatingly like hope. "I did it," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. "Mommy." I stood up. Olivia fell to her knees beside the wheelchair, tears streaming down her face as she pulled her daughter into a fierce embrace. Over Emma's shoulder, she saw Ethan watching with a gentle smile, no triumph in his expression, just quiet satisfaction. "See?" he said softly, meeting Olivia's eyes. The magic was always inside her. Sometimes we just need someone to remind us it's there. Lily was bouncing on her toes with excitement, but, following her father's lead, she didn't make a huge fuss. Instead, she simply said, "That was awesome, Emma. Next time maybe you can stand for 4 seconds. We can practice together if you want." The casualness of it, the assumption that there would be a next time, that progress was possible, that standing for 3 seconds was just the beginning, It was so different from the careful management of expectations Olivia had grown accustomed to from medical professionals. "How?" Olivia managed to ask, her voice breaking. "The doctor said the spinal damage was complete. They showed me the scans. They said she'd never." "Doctors know bodies," Ethan said, rising to his feet. "But sometimes healing isn't just about bodies. It's about believing something different is possible, about having someone believe it with you." He ruffled Lily's hair affectionately. "We should probably go." "But—" He hesitated, then pulled out a worn business card from his wallet. "I volunteer at a community center in Brooklyn. We work with kids like Emma. Nothing medical, just playing, trying, believing. You're welcome to come if you want." Olivia took the card with trembling fingers. She looked down at Emma, who was staring at her legs with an expression of fierce determination, as if she could will them to work through sheer force of desire. "The man makes sense, Mommy," Emma said quietly. "When he talked, something inside me remembered what legs are for." The card in Olivia's hand read simply, "Ethan Carter, Carter's Auto Repair," with an address in Brooklyn and a phone number. No mention of the community center, no credentials, no promises of miracles. Just a name and a number from a man who had just given her daughter something all the money in the world hadn't been able to buy: hope. That evening, Olivia sat in Emma's room long after her daughter had fallen asleep. Emma had tried to stand 6 more times before exhaustion overtook her, managing a full 5 seconds on the last attempt. Each time, she clutched the white stone Lily had given her, as if it truly contained magic. Olivia's phone buzzed incessantly with messages from the office, from board members, from her father. Tomorrow, there was a crucial merger meeting that could define the company's next decade. The old Olivia would already be reviewing documents, preparing strategies. But the old Olivia hadn't watched her paralyzed daughter stand up in Central Park. Before she could overthink it, she typed the number into her phone. "This is Olivia Sterling. You met my daughter Emma today." She stood for 5 seconds before bed. "Could we talk about the community center?" The response came within minutes. "That's wonderful about Emma. Tuesday evenings, 6 p.m. Building B. At the Sunset Park Recreation Complex. No pressure. Just come and see." Tuesday arrived with unusual anticipation. Olivia had cleared her entire evening, something unheard of during merger negotiations, and driven to Brooklyn in her Range Rover, Emma chattering excitedly in the back seat about seeing Lily again. It was more words than her daughter had spoken in months. The community center was nothing like the pristine medical facilities they were used to. Paint peeled from the walls, the equipment was obviously donated and mismatched, and the wheelchair ramp looked hand-built. But the moment they entered, Olivia understood why Ethan had brought them here. The space thrummed with joy, children of all abilities, playing together, laughing, trying, failing, trying again. No one stared at wheelchairs or prosthetics. Here, everyone had something, so no one was different. "Emma." Lily's voice cut through the chaos as she raced over, skidding to a stop just before impact. "You came. Dad said you might, but I was worried you wouldn't, because lots of people say they'll come, but then they don't, but you're here." Before either adult could intervene, Lily had grabbed Emma's hand and was pulling her toward a group of children playing a modified game of basketball. "Come on. Marcus is in a chair too, and he's the best shooter we have." Ethan appeared at Olivia's elbow, wearing the same easy smile that had disarmed her in the park. "She'll be fine." Lily's appointed herself Emma's personal inclusion specialist. "Is that safe?" Olivia asked, watching nervously, as Emma was absorbed into the game. "Safer than keeping her in bubble wrap," Ethan replied gently. "Kids need to be kids first. The therapy happens whether we label it or not." Over the next hour, Olivia watched her daughter transform. Emma laughed when she missed a shot, cheered when another child scored, and even attempted to stand again when reaching for a ball, managing 7 seconds this time with Lily and another girl supporting her arms. "She's remarkable," Olivia said softly. "They all are," Ethan replied. "They just need someone to see it." As the evening wound down and children began leaving with their parents, Ethan helped Emma with some simple exercises, nothing that looked medical, just games that happened to strengthen the right muscles. He never pushed, never demanded, just encouraged. And Emma responded, trying harder for this stranger than she ever had for licensed therapists. "Can we come back?" Emma asked as Olivia prepared to leave. "If your mom says it's okay," Ethan replied, glancing at Olivia. "Please, Mommy?" Emma's eyes were bright, with something Olivia hadn't seen in 18 months' anticipation for tomorrow. "We'll see," Olivia said, though she already knew the answer. As they drove home, Emma fell asleep clutching the white stone, a smile on her face. Olivia glanced in the rearview mirror at her daughter, then at the business card on her dashboard. A mechanic from Brooklyn had just given her daughter more hope than the best doctor's money could buy. It didn't make sense. It shouldn't work. But Emma had stood for 7 seconds, and that was more than she'd done in a year and a half. The next weeks fell into a pattern that would have seemed impossible to the old Olivia Sterling. Tuesdays and Thursdays, she left the office by 5 unheard of during merger negotiations and drove to Brooklyn. She traded her designer heels for sneakers, her silk blouses for cotton t-shirts. She sat on dusty floors and cheered for children she didn't know. And slowly, she began to remember what it felt like to hope. Emma's progress was slow but steady. 2 weeks in, she stood for 30 seconds. 3 weeks in, she took a single step while holding parallel bars. 4 weeks in, she walked 3 steps with a walker, while Lily cheered like she'd won the Olympics. And through it all, there was Ethan. He treated Emma's achievements with calm celebration, never overwhelming her with praise, but never minimizing her progress either. He had a gift for knowing exactly what each child needed, when to push, when to rest, when to simply play. "How did you learn this?" Olivia asked one evening as they watched Emma and Lily painting together. Emma standing at the easel for a full minute now. Trial and error with Lily, Ethan admitted. After her mom left, after the ear infections that almost took her hearing, I had to learn that fixing kids isn't like fixing cars. With cars, you identify the broken part and replace it. With kids, you have to help them remember they were never broken to begin with. Emma was broken, Olivia said quietly. The accident hurt her body, Ethan corrected gently. But Emma herself, the spark that makes her who she is, that was never broken. It just got buried under medical terms and limitations and everyone telling her what she couldn't do. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their daughters. Then Ethan spoke again. "You're different than I expected. What did you expect?" "Honestly, a typical Upper East Side mom. All surface, no substance. Designer everything. More concerned about appearances than her kid." He smiled self-deprecatingly. "Shows what I know about making assumptions." "I am concerned about appearances," Olivia admitted. Or, "I was." It's hard to care about board meetings when your daughter is learning to walk again. "The merger?" Ethan asked. She'd mentioned it in passing, surprised to find he understood the complexity of what she was dealing with. "It's falling apart," she said simply. "My father is furious. Says I'm destroying everything we've built." But Emma stood for a full minute yesterday. "So I can't bring myself to care." "That must be terrifying," Ethan observed. "Watching something you worked for crumble." Olivia turned to look at him, surprised by his insight. "It should be. But it's actually freeing. Like I've been wearing shoes that were too small for so long I forgot what it felt like to walk without pain." "I know that feeling," Ethan said softly. "When Lily's mom left, I thought my world was ending. Turned out it was just beginning. Just different than I'd planned." Their conversations became a highlight of Olivia's visits. While the children played, she and Ethan would talk about everything, about nothing. He told her about growing up poor but happy, about learning to fix cars from his grandfather, about the terror and joy of raising Lily alone. She told him about building her company, about her mother's death when she was young, about the pressure of being Richard Sterling's daughter. "Your father sounds intense," Ethan said after she described a particularly harsh phone call. "He means well," Olivia defended automatically. "He just has very specific ideas about success. And those ideas don't include Brooklyn community centers and mechanics. Those ideas don't include anything that doesn't increase portfolio value," Olivia admitted. "He's going to find out, eventually, about this place. About you. And when he does, we'll deal with it," Ethan said simply. "Emma's making progress. That's what matters." But Olivia knew her father. Richard Sterling didn't just deal with things. He eliminated obstacles, destroyed threats, controlled outcomes. And Ethan Carter, with his gentle smile and work-worn hands, would be seen as the biggest threat to the Sterling empire her father had ever faced. The confrontation came on a Thursday evening, 6 weeks after Emma had first stood in Central Park. She'd just managed 10 steps with a walker, her face glowing with achievement, when Richard Sterling walked through the community center door like winter arriving early. His presence changed the atmosphere instantly. Children stopped mid-play. Volunteers straightened unconsciously. And Olivia felt her spine go rigid with familiar dread. "Olivia," he said, his voice carrying across the space with decades of practiced authority. "We need to talk. Now." "Dad, not here." "Yes, here." His eyes swept the center dismissively. "I want to see what's so important. That you've abandoned a $30 billion merger." "Abandoned?" Olivia's voice rose. "I've been at every critical meeting. Your body has been there. Your mind has been here. With these." He paused, his lip curling slightly. "People." Ethan had stood from where he'd been helping Emma and walked over with that same easy confidence that seemed immune to intimidation. "Mr. Sterling, I'm Ethan Carter. Your granddaughter is making remarkable progress." Richard looked at Ethan's extended hand as if it were contaminated. "I know exactly who you are, Mr. Carter. A mechanic with delusions of medical expertise, taking advantage of my daughter's desperation." "Dad," Olivia protested, but Ethan remained calm. "I'm not taking advantage of anyone, sir. I'm just providing a space where kids can be kids. Emma's progress is her own achievement." "Progress?" Richard laughed, cold and sharp. "A few steps with a walker? My granddaughter needs real medical care, not false hope from someone playing pretend." "Grandpa?" Everyone turned. Emma had wheeled herself over, her small face anxious but determined. "Why are you being mean to Mr. Ethan?" Richard's expression softened marginally. "I'm protecting you, darling, and your mother." "From what?" Emma asked with the devastating honesty of childhood. "From being happy? From walking again?" "You're not walking, Emma. You're—" Emma's face set with determination. Olivia recognized as pure Sterling stubbornness. She gripped the arms of her wheelchair and slowly, deliberately, pushed herself to standing. Her legs shook, her face went red with effort, but she stood. Then, as everyone watched in stunned silence, she took one step, then another, then 5 more before Ethan caught her as her strength gave out. "That's not real walking," Richard said, but his voice had lost its edge. "It's more than your expensive doctors said she'd ever do," Olivia shot back. 6 weeks ago, they said she'd never stand again. Look at her, Dad. Really look at her." Richard did look, and for a moment, his corporate armor cracked. His granddaughter was beaming, proud and alive, in a way she hadn't been since the accident. But then his face hardened again. "This ends now," he said. "The board has called an emergency meeting. Either you return full-time, immediately, or they'll vote you out. I can only protect you so much." "Then let them vote," Olivia said quietly. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Richard's face went from red to purple. "You would throw away everything? Your career? Emma's future? For this fantasy? Emma's future is standing right in front of you, Olivia replied. She walked 7 steps. That's not fantasy. Richard turned his cold fury on Ethan. You did this. You've poisoned my daughter against her own family. Her own success. He showed me what success really looks like, Olivia interrupted. It looks like Emma laughing. It looks like hope. It looks like choosing happiness over stock options. Happiness doesn't pay for medical care. Happiness doesn't secure Emma's future. Neither does a trust fund if she's too broken to use it. Olivia shot back. Richard pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. I'm calling the car. We're leaving. And if you ever contact my family again, he looked at Ethan. I will destroy you. I know about your custody situation with your ex-wife. One word from my lawyers about unsafe conditions here, about exposing your daughter to liability, and you'll never see her again. Ethan went pale, his hands clenching. But before he could respond, Lily had run over and wrapped her arms around his leg. Nobody's taking me from my daddy, she declared with 7-year-old certainty. He's the best daddy ever, and Emma's mom is nice, and Emma is my friend, and you're just a mean old man. Lily, Ethan said warningly, but there was pride in his eyes. Richard looked at the little girl clinging to her father, at Emma reaching for Olivia's hand, at his daughter choosing a rundown community center over a boardroom. Something shifted in his expression, not quite softening, but reconsidering. You have 48 hours, he told Olivia. The board meets Monday morning. Be there, or lose everything. He left without another word, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Emma started crying. I don't want to stop coming here. I don't want to stop seeing Lily and Mr. Ethan. Olivia knelt beside her daughter, pulling her close. We're not stopping anything, baby. But Grandpa said. Grandpa says a lot of things. Olivia looked up at Ethan, who was holding Lily protectively. I'm sorry. I knew he would do this eventually. I just hoped. It's not your fault, Ethan said, though worry creased his face. He's right about my ex. She's been looking for ammunition to change our custody agreement. I won't let that happen, Olivia said fiercely. I have lawyers too, Olivia. His voice was gentle, but firm. You need to think about this. Your career. Emma's security. I am thinking. For the first time in years, I'm thinking clearly. She stood, decision crystallizing. Monday morning, I'm going to that board meeting, but not to beg for my job. The weekend passed in a blur of phone calls and preparations. Olivia did something she'd never done before. She called each board member personally. Not to politic or negotiate, but to tell them the truth about Emma's progress, about what really mattered, about choosing life over spreadsheets. Some were dismissive, some were hostile, but a surprising number listened, really listened. Jim Crawford, whose own son had special needs, was particularly supportive. I've been where you are, he said quietly. I chose the job. 20 years later. My son won't speak to me. Don't make my mistake. Monday morning arrived, gray and drizzling. Olivia dressed carefully, not in her usual power suit, but in simple black slacks and a blue blouse Emma had picked out. You look pretty, Mommy, Emma said. Like yourself. The boardroom was full when she arrived. 12 faces, mostly male, mostly over 50, all wearing identical expressions of corporate displeasure. Richard sat at the head of the table, his face unreadable. Gentlemen, Olivia began, not taking her usual seat, but standing at the front of the room. I know you're expecting me to apologize, to promise renewed dedication, to beg for my position. I'm not going to do any of that. Murmurs rippled through the room. 6 weeks ago, my daughter was told she'd never walk again. Yesterday, she took 20 steps, not because of the millions we spent on specialists, but because a mechanic in Brooklyn knew something all your expertise couldn't teach, that sometimes healing isn't about medicine. It's about belief. She pulled out her phone, showing a video Emma had insisted she take. Her daughter, standing at the parallel bars, taking step after determined step, while Lily cheered her on. This is success, Olivia continued. Not stock prices or market share, but this. My daughter laughing. My daughter walking. My daughter believing in tomorrow. This is very touching, board member Harrison interrupted, but hardly relevant to. It's entirely relevant, Olivia cut him off. Because I'm done pretending that spreadsheets matter more than souls. I'm done choosing conference calls over consciousness. If you want to vote me out, do it. But know this. I'll take my 40% stake and walk. The merger will collapse. Stock will plummet, and you'll have to explain to shareholders why you prioritized conformity over competence. You're threatening us, another member asked incredulously. I'm offering you honesty, Olivia replied. I can do this job better than anyone in this room. But I'll do it my way. Flexible hours when my daughter needs me. Priorities that include humanity alongside profit. A demonstration that success doesn't require sacrificing everything that makes us human. This is ridiculous, Harrison blustered. Richard, control your daughter. But Richard was staring at the video still frozen on Olivia's phone. Emma mid-step, face glowing with determination that looked exactly like her mother's. Or, Richard said slowly, we could consider that Olivia has brought this company from 10 million to 30 billion in value while raising a child alone. Perhaps her methods, unconventional as they are, have merit. The room went silent, shocked. Richard Sterling never broke ranks. Never supported anything that challenged traditional corporate structure. I've spent the weekend reviewing our competition, Richard continued. 3 of our main rivals have implemented flexible family policies. Their productivity is up 20%. Their retention is up 30%. Maybe my daughter isn't destroying our company. Maybe she's showing us how to evolve it. Richard, Harrison protested. You can't seriously. I can, and I am. Richard stood, his presence filling the room. I call for a vote. All in favor of retaining Olivia Sterling as CEO, with amended terms allowing flexible scheduling for family medical needs. One by one, hands rose. Not all, but enough. More than enough. Motion carried, Richard announced. He looked at Olivia, and for the first time in years, she saw pride in his eyes. Now, about this community center. If Emma is going to continue attending, it needs proper funding, safety upgrades, equipment. I'm proposing Sterling Industries sponsors it fully. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. Dad, don't mistake this for approval of that mechanic, Richard added. But there was less venom in it. I still think you could do better, but Emma clearly thinks otherwise, and she's shown Sterling's stubbornness in spades. The meeting concluded with details that would once have consumed Olivia's attention but now felt like background noise. She had won not just her job, but something far more valuable, the right to define success on her own terms. That evening, she drove to the community center with Emma, practically vibrating with excitement in the back seat. Do you think Mr. Ethan knows about keeping your job? About Grandpa? We'll tell him together, Olivia promised. The center was quieter than usual, many families already gone. They found Ethan in the back room, helping Lily with homework while looking distinctly worried. When he saw them, relief and concern warred on his face. How did it go? He asked carefully. Mommy was amazing, Emma announced before Olivia could speak. She showed them my walking video, and Grandpa said we could keep coming, and he's going to give the center money. Emma, breathe, Olivia laughed. She met Ethan's eyes. I kept my job. On my terms. And my father. Well, he's not throwing any more threats around. Ethan's smile started slow but grew until it transformed his entire face. That's incredible. I was so worried. I told you, Lily interrupted, looking up from her math worksheet. Emma's mom is brave. She's like a superhero, but with prettier clothes. Out of the mouths of babes, Ethan murmured. Then, more quietly to Olivia, you risked everything. No, Olivia corrected. I risked nothing that mattered. Jobs can be replaced. Moments like this can't. Emma had pulled herself up on the parallel bars and was taking careful steps while Lily counted each one. 15. 16. 17. She's getting stronger, Ethan observed. We both are, Olivia replied, and realized she meant it in ways that had nothing to do with physical therapy. Over the next months, the community center transformed. Sterling Industries funding meant new equipment, renovated spaces, and more programs for children with different abilities. But the heart of it remained the same, a place where kids could be kids first, where progress was celebrated but not demanded, where hope was offered freely without conditions. Emma's progress continued steadily. By month 3, she was walking with just a cane. By month 6, she only needed it for long distances. The doctors called it miraculous, inexplicable, impossible. Olivia called it Ethan's gift, the ability to see possibility where others saw problems. The relationship between Olivia and Ethan developed slowly, carefully. Coffee after center sessions became dinner, while the girls played. Dinner became Saturday outings, museums, parks, beaches, 2 single parents and their daughters forming an unconventional family. People stare. Olivia mentioned one afternoon, as they watched the girls build sandcastles at Coney Island. Let them, Ethan replied simply. They're probably wondering how a mechanic landed someone so far out of his league, or how a CEO landed someone so grounded, Olivia countered. Maybe they're just jealous, Ethan suggested, gesturing to where Emma and Lily were shrieking with laughter as waves chased them up the beach. Emma moving slower but keeping up. Not everyone gets this. Gets what? Second chances, new beginnings, family that doesn't fit in boxes but fits perfectly anyway. Richard's acceptance came gradually. He attended Emma's first unassisted walk across the center's gymnasium, maintaining corporate composure while tears leaked down his cheeks. He shook Ethan's hand afterward briefly, stiffly, but genuinely. You did what I couldn't, he admitted quietly. You gave them both back their lives. They did it themselves, Ethan replied. Sometimes people just need permission to hope. The custody threat from Ethan's ex-wife dissolved when Olivia's lawyers got involved, making it clear that any challenge would be met with resources Michelle couldn't match. It wasn't about intimidation but protection. Lily belonged with her father, and now she had an extended family ready to fight for that truth. 1 year after that first meeting in Central Park, they gathered for Emma's 9th birthday. Not at the Sterling penthouse or a fancy venue, but at the community center. Surrounded by all the children and families who had become their expanded universe. Emma really walked to her cake, only the slightest limp showing what she'd overcome. As she blew out her candles, Olivia asked what she'd wished for. Can't tell, Emma said with a grin that was pure happiness. But it already came true anyway. Later, as they cleaned up, Ethan pulled Olivia aside. I have something for you. He handed her a small box. Inside was a simple silver necklace with 2 charms, a wheel and a star. The wheel is for the journey, he explained. All the places we've been, all the places we're going. The star is for hope, what you and Emma taught me to believe in again. What we taught you? Olivia laughed softly. Ethan, you gave us everything. No, he said seriously. You gave me purpose beyond fixing broken machines. You showed me that sometimes the most valuable things can't be measured in dollars or expectations. You taught me that different worlds can merge if the people in them are brave enough to build bridges. Olivia kissed him then. There in the community center that had become their foundation, while their daughters giggled and pretended not to watch. It wasn't a fairy tale kiss, it was better. It was real, earned through struggle and choice and the daily decision to believe in possibility. 2 years later, they married in that same community center, Emma walking down the aisle as flower girl, Lily as ring bearer. Richard Sterling gave his daughter away with something approaching a genuine smile, having learned that success comes in forms that spreadsheets can't calculate. In his toast, Richard said something that surprised everyone. "I spent my life building an empire. My daughter built something better. A family that doesn't make sense on paper, but makes perfect sense in practice." To Olivia and Ethan, who proved that sometimes the best mergers are the ones between hearts, not companies. The community center thrived, becoming a model for adaptive programs nationwide. Emma became its youngest spokesperson, telling her story at fundraisers, with the poise of someone who had learned that falling isn't failing. It's just part of learning to rise. But the real magic happened in the quiet moments. Emma and Lily doing homework together, arguing like real sisters. Ethan teaching Olivia to change oil, while she taught him about stock portfolios. Family dinners where CEO and mechanic, Brooklyn and Manhattan, merged into something unique and wonderful. One evening, as they watched the sun set from their new home, a brownstone in Park Slope that bridged their two worlds, Emma asked the question that had started everything. "Do you still have my magic stone?" "The one Lily gave me?" Lily produced it from her pocket, where she'd kept it safe for years. "It's our stone now," she announced. "For our family." Emma held it up to the light, watching it sparkle. "Mr. Ethan was wrong, you know. The magic wasn't inside me." "No?" Ethan asked, pulling her onto his lap. "No," Emma said firmly. "The magic was in all of us finding each other. In Mom being brave enough to trust you. In you seeing me as more than broken. In Lily making me her friend. In Grandpa learning to change. The magic was in becoming family." She was right, of course. The magic had never been in the stone, or even in individual strength. It had been in the courage to reach across differences, to believe in possibility when probability said otherwise, to choose hope over statistics and love over logic. As they sat together, CEO mother, mechanic father, and two girls who had made them a family, Olivia thought about all the moments that had led them here. The wheelchair in Central Park, the first trembling steps, the boardroom ultimatum, the choice to risk everything for something that couldn't be quantified or guaranteed. Some people would call it luck. Others might call it fate. But Olivia knew better. It was what happened when you stopped letting fear dictate your choices, when you decided that the distance between worlds was just space waiting to be bridged, when you understood that the most profound transformations often came disguised as ordinary moments like a stranger, kneeling beside a wheelchair and saying, "The magic was always inside you." The stone still sits on their mantle, catching light and throwing rainbows across the wall. Visitors often ask about it, and the family tells the story differently each time but always with the same ending. Sometimes the greatest achievements can't be measured in dollars or milestones, but in the courage to believe that broken things can heal, that different worlds can merge, and that love, simple, stubborn, everyday love, is the most powerful force in any universe. Emma would go on to become a pediatric physical therapist, specializing in helping children who were told they'd never walk again. She would keep that white stone on her desk, passing it to young hands that needed something to hold on to, while they learned to believe in their own possibilities. Lily would become a doctor, but not the kind anyone expected. She would pioneer programs that brought medical care to communities that couldn't afford it, bridging worlds the way her father had taught her. Ethan would expand his auto shop into a training program for at-risk youth, teaching them that fixing things, cars or lives, was about patience and faith more than perfect parts. And Olivia would revolutionize Sterling Industries, proving that corporations could have hearts, that profits and principles weren't mutually exclusive, that success meant lifting others as you climbed. But all of that was still to come. For now, there was just this. A family on a Brooklyn stoop, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of possible holding tight to each other and to the truth that miracles aren't always about the destination. Sometimes they're about being brave enough to take the first step, even when you can't see the whole staircase. The magic was never in the stone. It was in the believing. It was in the choice to see potential where others saw problems. It was in understanding that the most profound journeys begin not with certainty but with someone saying, "What if?" and someone else answering, "Let's find out." This is the truth about miracles. They happen every day, in community centers and boardrooms, in Brooklyn apartments and Manhattan penthouses, wherever people choose hope over fear, wherever strangers become family, wherever someone kneels beside a wheelchair and says, "The magic was always inside you." And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough to make a paralyzed girl stand, a frozen heart thaw, and two different worlds become one.